Hi everyone, it's Liam here from Rating the Races. So we've got the weekend review coming up here. I just want to highlight to pro members that the early ratings for Cheltenham have been updated again. So do go ahead and look at the ratings on the 12th of March. You will find quite a few of the races we've got. The early ratings for those available for pro members, obviously you can see on the screen. The Skybet Supreme Novices, Ballyburn, would take all the beating. Surely they're going to stick to that and not go up in trip. I have seen some suggestions that they might go up in trip, which I think would be unnecessary and madness, really. A few points I do want to make about my previous video. First of all, just clarifying what I was referring to with regards to like the let me just find the race. This one. With regards to the Betfair Hurdle being used as a race where they try and get horses handicapped for future races. And what I mean by that is it's a lot easier to cover up a horse if you feel you've got another horse in the race that will take all of the beating. So the two that I kind of highlighted for Sandown, for example, were Under Control and Knickerbocker Glory. Interestingly, JP's won the race, Iberico Lord. If he'd ran Under Control and it had finished down the field and he'd won it with Iberico Lord, Under Control would have dropped a few pounds potentially, and they've won the race. Similarly, Dan Skelton went close with our selection Lo de Sud, and these other two finished 5th and 6th. Now, I think Knickerbocker Glory might get dropped a pound. I don't think Favour will, but Favour I think will end up in the More Battle. Knickerbocker Glory ends up in the Imperial Cup, and you nearly won the Betfair Hurdle. So I kind of feel I was on the right lines with those, to be honest. Another comment that I made so I highlighted 5 that I thought would handle the ground. They were Spirit Donu, but I said I don't think his form was up to much. He finished 15th. I said a Castle de Motte finished 8th. Knickerbocker Glory would finish 6th. Lo de Sud would finish 2nd, and Iberico Lord finished 1st. Now, I didn't actually say Outer Belly wouldn't handle the ground, but it didn't strike me as one that really wanted the ground, particularly if you look at the form. So although he'd won or run well on soft, a lot of his other races had been on better going. And that kind of suggests that they believe it wants at worst soft and probably better going. When you reply with comments like, whatever mate, you instantly kind of discount what you're saying. If you want to have a discussion, go for it. But whatever and whatever mate is just, childish. And your Outer Belly clearly didn't handle the ground. He finished 14th, and he was one of only 2 horses that didn't shorten in the run, the other being Norman Fletcher. So, yeah, I don't think he wanted that heavy going, and I stick by what I said there. But if you do want to have a discussion, absolutely post your thoughts on my videos. But just putting things like whatever and whatever mate, yeah, I think that's very childish. So let's move on to the review itself. A few horses that I wanted to highlight. Starting off with the Novice Hurdle at Newbury, which our top-rated horse won the race. Our top-rated horses actually had 20 top-rated winners over the last 2 days, Saturday and Sunday, which was great for the ratings. Remember, if you're a premium or pro member, that's what you're paying for. You're paying for the ratings. You're not actually paying for my thoughts. These generally go out to everybody, so these are free. You're paying for the ratings. You're not paying for what I'm saying. The horse to take out of this Novice Hurdle was David's Well. Go and watch his run back. I can't remember who was riding it. Let's just scroll along and have a look. Rex Dingle. I don't think he asked much of an effort from David's Well. Very quietly ridden. Finished 5th. I think he should have got up for 3rd. Looks like one that they're going to be aiming at a handicap further down the line. So he's had 2 runs now over hurdles. This was definitely a step forward, and I imagine there might be a further step forward next time. With regards to this race, I was very surprised by the tactics of John Joe O'Neill. On heavy going, you don't want to be too far back. Making headway went forward. East India Express sat in 2nd. The next horse who's, on our ratings, for example, was Has Thing. I kept thinking that said Hash Thing, but it doesn't. It says Has Thing. Held up miles, too far back and never got involved. But David's Well is definitely one for future handicaps. Go back and watch the race if you want to see more on that one. The next race I wanted to talk about was the rated hurdle, the GAA rated hurdle, featuring Eagle Fang, Bright Legend, Pacini, Nara, and Open to Question. Now, we were on Nara at 10 to 1. Now, I know the favourite Lark in the Morning came out. But when we highlighted Nara, she was the outsider of the field. She ended up going off close third favourite, not too far off the front two in the market. Never really looked like getting involved. She probably over-raced again. I do think they're trying to get a handicap for something. I don't know what it is. It might not be the Boodles Juvenile Hurdle. She didn't get a handicap mark. Eagle Fang, who won the race, got 128. Because of Lark in the Morning came out, I think everyone kind of looked at this race and went, nah, it's nothing. To be fair, Eagle Fang had ran some good performances. This 146.5 demonstrated that he did have ability. And maybe it was better than what people are thinking. And Eagle Fang's a little bit bigger price than what you would have thought for the Boodles. Where is Eagle Fang? Considering that race generally works out so well, I thought they would have gone kind of here, 10s, 12s. But you can still get 16s about him, just about. They are now shortening again, Eagle Fang. Now he's got his 128 mark. But yeah, I just thought that was a better race than... It was a better performance than what we're kind of giving him credit for, because the favourite came out. And maybe because Nara, the unexposed, unknown one, kind of disappointed. But yeah, I don't want to give up on Nara. It might not be for the Boodles, but just going to keep an eye out on what she does end up in handicap-wise. Moving on to the 130 at Newbury, the Betfair Serial Winners Fund Handicap Hurdle. Emerton was a good winner here, to be fair, because looked in a bit of trouble turning for home. Picked up strongly after the last. Clearly loves Newbury. Kintara was very unlucky not to win the race. I thought did everything right. Just got beaten by a better horse. There was two in this race that I was very interested in going forward. The first one is Equinus. Well, there's probably three, actually. The first one is Equinus, who was never close enough to land a blow here. And in the race that we just mentioned at Newbury, the first race, those at the front stayed there. Those that were held up never got involved. Now, Equinus was one of those held up here and wasn't involved at all. Before running on really strong with your third. You can see, considering he finished third, he never shortened in the odds. The lowest he got was 8.6. He went off 8.53 because he was never going to win the race, but he's ran on well for third. Now, I think it's obvious where they've got to go with him. There is a 3-mile handicap at the end of the season at Aintree. And if we look here, he's got a 152.8 at Aintree over 3 mile. So I imagine that's where we'll see Equinus. If he does turn up at Cheltenham, I wouldn't be backing him at Cheltenham, but I may well be backing him come Aintree. The second horse that caught my eye here was Picana, our top-rated horse. Now, he was top-rated on ability. He hadn't run for 660 days, the 10-year-old, for 660 days. I thought it was a very good effort, to be fair. Travelled into it nicely, looked like he was going to be the biggest danger to Kintara, and just found those 660 days catching up with him late on. You can see he traded at 2 to 1 in the run from an XSP of 14.343, which is just over 13 to 1. Travelled nicely, should improve for that run. And I mean, the Coral Cup's got to be the target, isn't it? If maybe he didn't quite get home, dropping back to 2.5, I think that would be where I would go, because you're not going to find a Potemps qualifier quick enough. Run him in the Potemps in the Coral Cup, and then potentially at Aintree after that. But yeah, I think Picana for the Coral Cup could be interesting. I don't know whether there's any odds. Let's have a look. No, there are no odds currently for Picana in the Coral Cup. And the final one of that race that I'd be potentially interested in was another one who got really well supported again, and that was Ikarak. Our selection again got really well supported into 9 to 2. Never really looked like winning. You can see he only shortened by 16% from 11 to 2 to just shy of 5 to 1. I don't know whether he's getting this 3-mile trip, and the way he runs, because he's so keen and wants to go forward, maybe it's worth dropping him back in trip. And the fact that Bradley Harris keeps riding, why don't they go for the Martin Pipe with him? Go for the Martin Pipe, go forward, try and make all the running and see if you can stay there. Again, let's have a look to see if he's even got a price yet. He hasn't. But it'd be very interesting if Ikarak runs in the Martin Pipe, I think. Moving on to the 205, you can actually see I highlighted those three here. Equinox for the Aintree Handicap, Ikarak for the Martin Pipe, and Picano for the Coral Cup. Moving on to the 205, the Denman Chase, won by Shishkin, beating Hitman Protectorat. Protectorat tried to make all the running, he just found that he wasn't good enough. Sam Brown wasn't good enough, Does He Know wasn't good enough. Hitman doesn't stay, I don't think, and is not the best at finishing anyway. But the fact that he got so close to Shishkin, that would, for me, would be a worry for Shishkin. Now, I know it was on heavy ground, and he's probably won despite the conditions. That might have been Nicky Henderson's angle here, that we'll win it, even though he won't like the ground. And he's probably just beaten horses that had reasons why they couldn't go past him. I wouldn't be... If I was the trainer or owner of Galopin de Champs, I would not be worried about Shishkin for the Gold Cup. Moving on to the 240, the Game Spirit Chase, won by Edward Stone, with Funambule Savola finishing second this year after winning it for the last two. I mean, Boot Hill was a handicapper trying to prove that he was good enough for graded class. He wasn't. Amarillo Sky had come back from a long layoff. And Funambule Savola clearly isn't the level of Edward Stone and has never been the level of Edward Stone. And I don't think it really suggested that Edward Stone is going to go close to beating anything in the Champion Chase, to be honest. El Fabiolo and John Bonnet are still miles clear. I don't know what I would do with Edward Stone. He's probably going to run and finish third or fourth, isn't he? Moving on to the Betfair Hurdle. So, as I've mentioned earlier, we highlighted 5. We knocked it down to 3. We went for 2. And the one we took out last of all was Iberico Lord, which is very frustrating, especially as we were on L'Eau de Sud. Look at that. He went off 55 on Betfair. 55.0 on Betfair. And he ran an absolute stormer. Jumped the last in the lead, but sneaking down the inside with a really confident stalking ride was Nicolas Boinville on Iberico Lord. Take Iberico Lord out and L'Eau de Sud has won that comfortably. Dan Skelton was right. He did have a horse, and I believe I was right in what I was saying in terms of Dan felt he had a horse a little while ago when he ran him in the Moor Battle, finished third. He ran him in the Greatwood Hurdle, pulled up, and now he's run him in a Betfair Hurdle. So he's run him in 3 races where there's reasons to run, and I think he's just been beaten by a very, very progressive Iberico Lord, who I don't know whether they'll end up in the... it's got to be a long-term champion hurdle horse, Iberico Lord. Do you run it in a county? Probably, off nearly, a high weight, but I think there might be something better handicap next time, because Iberico Lord's going to get, spanked for that, to be honest. Of those in behind, as I've mentioned, Favois for the Moor Battle, Knickerbocker Glory for the Imperial Cup, and Under Control for the Imperial Cup. Under Control beat Iberico Lord at Sandown. Clearly very good form. Knickerbocker Glory was second to Isio at Sandown. And Favois has finished third in the Moor Battle twice. Now, interestingly, I did get a reply about one of my tweets, and they've unfortunately deleted their tweet. Don't delete your tweet. If you replied to it, leave it there. If I've explained my thoughts, then leave it there. So basically, I put Favois for the Moor Battle, and they just replied with short or like Favois County ? To which I explained, I think the Moor Battle Hurdle first. Twice placed third off 143, ran today off 137, and Heidi took 7 off. So was essentially running off 130. Go to Kelso first and win that, and then you get a bonus for winning the Moor Battle and the county. Dan Skelton could turn up to the county with 3 or 4. He could turn up with Favois, Knickerbocker Glory, L'Eau de Sud. He's probably got something else. Knowing Dan Skelton, he'll probably run Pembroke in it again and be convinced that it's a 2-miler. Or suddenly West Cork appears from nowhere. I'm sure he's retired, but that's just a joke, that one. But yeah, Favois, off that type of mark, £6 lower mark, official £6 lower mark, and Heidi taking another 7 off, £13 lower than finishing when finishing third. That would be, a huge drop in the handicap for Favois, and that's got to go for the Moor Battle with the County Hurdle as the next race under a penalty, trying to win a bonus. Anything else? Castle de Motte, a little bit disappointing. Travelled okay, looked like he needed to learn to jump. Jumped a couple too big. Obviously, it was his first time seeing these fences. An interesting thing that we did see, so obviously with a Castle de Motte being reshod at the start, Ito Ditto ran no sort of race, and it was really interesting to hear Harry Cobden come and talk to Luke Harvey, or just mention to Luke that the horse has already ran his race before the start. It would be really good if we heard that more from jockeys, you know, if they could explain why horses have disappointed, including the big price horses. So often you see, like, you might hear why Only Matter of Time ran disappointing because it was 8-1. But when your horse is 50s, they don't give you that analysis. They don't tell you why it ran so poorly, or, you know, wasn't good enough, or didn't do this, or had clearly ran his race before the race had even started. So there's always reasons, well, not always, but there's sometimes reasons why horses run disappointingly, and then next time they bounce back because, you know, they knew, but they didn't tell anyone. So yeah, it'd be interesting to hear. I thought that was really good from Harry Cobden to explain that about Ito Ditto. Love to hear what Daryl Jacob thought of a Castle de Motte, what the jockey thought of Donica, what the jockey thought of Altabelli. Did he think the ground was just terrible? You know, Jonathan Burke, and he hated the ground and never travelled. Yeah, I'd like to hear more post-race analysis from all of the jockeys, not just 2 seconds as they walk into the weighing-in room. Moving on to the 350, one more horse that I think he's got to go. Mr. Coffey's got to go back for the Kim Muir. Please don't shout at me. He was second in the Kim Muir a few years ago, and he should have won it. Sam Whaley-Cohen gave him a terrible ride, in my opinion. Held him up. Came there travelling nicely. Didn't want to get after him. Didn't want to move, to be honest. And yeah, I think he thought he was going to win it comfortably. He didn't. He finished second. He was RTR2 that day. He got beat by our top-rated horse in Chambard. So it looked good for the ratings. But I think Mr. Coffey, I think he could go well in the Kim Muir if he ran in that. That's the type of race. It's not super competitive. It's not right at the top class handicaps. But it's a little bit further, which he does need. He does need 3 mile plus. At least, 3 mile 2 plus, not 3 mile. This is too short for him. Moving on to the Hunter Chase. This is just a race that... Go and watch this race. It's on the line versus Billaway. It's just a really interesting race to watch. How do you get horses go 101? 2 of them, and only one of them win. It was really... Obviously, only one's going to win, but it was a really interesting race to watch over the final straight, really. That's all you need to watch for that race. 3 horses that I want to talk about quickly in bumpers. Royal Infantry won at Newbury. Cantico won at Navan. And Tishan, the highly regarded Tishan, I think, is it a Bloodstock agent, has highlighted Tishan as his horse to follow, or said he's the one that is very interesting. Looks like it's going to Cheltenham. Of those 3, though, who would be most interesting for me? Cantico. I really think Cantico was the best, performed and produced the best performance there out of those 3. The market's gone. Tishan, they like Tishan. Cantico is a little bit shorter now in places. And the Royal Infantry is quite a big price, I think. Where is he? Royal Infantry. Where are you, mate? Let's do a search for it. Oops. It's not even priced up. Have they mentioned that they're going straight to Aintree with him? They might have done. Moving on to Sunday. Obviously, a couple of those races were from Sunday, including Tishan's. Moving on to Sunday. I was frustrated to see Helvetic Dream win this. Highlighted him for subsequent handicaps. He was in my... I'm looking out for him in a handicap. Unfortunately, he won. I say unfortunately, it doesn't totally mean he's going to get a ridiculous mark. Handicapper didn't give him a mark. Another one that I've also got down for handicaps is Ascending. And he has dropped he's dropped £2 for that to 131. Thought it was interesting that quite a well-respected pundit or punter has slagged off the handicapper for only dropping him £2, saying he should have been dropped 10 for that. Yeah, okay. I do always wonder whether sometimes these are pocket talking in terms of not necessarily that he backed him yesterday, but he wanted to back him in a race coming up, and he wanted a few more pound off him. And now, by slagging him off, nobody's going to be interested in him, really. Just an interesting little bit of cynicism there from me. Could be one for something like the County Hurdle. I mean, he does have some decent form in the past. He was fifth in the champion in the Supreme Novices last year. He still hasn't won over hurdles, but I think that would be his fourth run of the season at Cheltenham, and I think it could be interesting back to the scene of probably his best performance if he turned up in a County Hurdle. Does he have odds for that? Ascending, he does. You can get up to 20, so we're not saying 25. Bet365. Don't let you have bets. Moving on to the 205 at Exeter. I thought this was a really interesting race to watch. I was quite pleased with the result in terms of Krabilly winning it. So Krabilly was going to win a handicap 2 runs ago when falling. That did frank the form of Ginny's Destiny. I still think Krabilly was going to beat Ginny's Destiny. Tamuras is a former Grade 1 winner and has got his act together over fences when winning at Aintree. Trelawn is running over 2 mile 3. Let's have a look at his performances. So he finished third over 2 mile 3. He finished second over 2 mile 3. He finished third over 2 mile 4. He won over 2 mile 3. That is his best performance there, 150.9. Over 2 miles 7 at Uttoxeter. So essentially 3 miles. That's what they're doing with him. He is being handicapped. He is being aimed at the handicap. He is being aimed at the Ultima. I'm pretty confident of that. This is Kim Bailey's horse for the Ultima. It is Trelawn. You can currently get top price of 20s. I think he'll be much shorter than that on the day, because I think once people realise what he's been doing this season over fences, he's been getting experience, and he has been getting away with running in races that don't suit. But as soon as he goes back up to 3 mile, which I think will be at the Cheltenham Festival, obviously the timing is perfect in terms of a month before. I think he will massively improve on that run for Kim Bailey. So Trelawn is one that I'm very interested in for the Ultima, and I will be having a bet on him. 245 at Navan. Hidden Valley Lake won the race, beating Beacon Edge, De Cup of Glory. Galvin was 4th. That was a great run from Galvin. Delta White was 6th, Ashdale Bob 5th. Now, I've obviously highlighted Ashdale Bob as one that needs to drop in the handicap, and he's dropped a couple of pounds. I just want to check now. So, Ashdale Bob horse. I'm just checking this on my other screen at the moment. Give me 2 seconds. So, he's now rated 147. And when he ran in the Coral Cup in 2022, he was rated 152. And Jack Foley took 3 off. Now, in my opinion, the English handicapper, cannot say that Ashdale Bob has ran to anywhere near 152 this year. Coming into that, he'd finished second to the Devil's Coachman. Coming into the 2022, he'd finished second by a head in a Grade 2. He'd finished third in a Grade 2. He'd finished 7th over fences. You can ignore that one. And he'd run a couple of others over fences. But looking at his hurdles form, 3rd in a Grade 2 and then 2nd in a Grade 2. Recently, over hurdles, he's not done anywhere near that. He's finished 3rd of 7, beaten 7 lengths in a conditions race. He then finished 3rd of 4 in a Grade 2, beaten 13 lengths. And he finished 5th of 8, beaten 15 lengths. So I don't believe the English handicapper can go, yeah, he's still rated 152. I really don't. I think he's got to bring him down to at least the 149 mark that the Irish handicap has got it, the 147 mark, in my opinion, that the Irish handicap has got him. And if you went purely on that, that would say he was at least £5 lower than when he finished 3rd in the Coral Cup in 2022. Now, if they could then get a jockey that also takes off 3 or 5, he would look very well handicapped, considering who he took on in the Coral Cup. He was beaten by Commander of Fleet, who had previously finished 2nd in an Albert Bartlett. He was beaten by Fast or Slow, who we all know is, being aimed at the Gold Cup. finished second at Galopin Des Champs, was beaten Galopin a couple of times, finished second at Correct Rambler. And those three all beat Camprond, who just ran his races at Cheltenham. I think that's very, very interesting for me. I'd love to know the mark that Ashtail Bob's going to get. And I think he's very, very interesting for that Coral Cup, to be honest. Don't know whether we've got any prices for him yet. Let's have a look. Ashdale, you can get prices. Look at that, 20s. I think he's got to go there, hasn't he? He's got to run in the Coral Cup. He doesn't qualify for the Temps final. He's not been running over fences. He does have some form at Cheltenham. I mean, he only went off 25 last year for the Stayers. He went off 25 for the Stayers. He went off 14s for the Coral Cup in 2022 off a £5 higher mark based on his English-Irish handicap mark. But he just cannot be given 152 again. That's just not possible, in my opinion. I really don't understand how the handicapper could do that. He's got to go lower. And even if he was, if they gave him 149, it'd still be £3 lower. And he wasn't beaten far by Commander of Fleet, a former Grade 1 runner-up, and a subsequent multiple Grade 1 winner in Fast or Slow. I think that looks a good bet, to be honest. Ashdale Bob. Again, interesting to see that punter was quite disappointed that the handicapper only dropped him £2. But I think if you drop that horse 5 or 6 or 7, suddenly it could be ridiculously well handicapped for a handicap if they've not been trying in these races. Just been running here to see what they can do. The Coral Cup is I'd be really strong on Ashdale Bob if he does turn up, and I probably will be having another bet on him in the Coral Cup. Interesting to see the front three all shortening now for the cross country again. Manila Indo, Galvin and Delta Work. I'm on Galvin and Delta Work. I just hoping that Manila Indo isn't good enough. Personally, I think Galvin will be aimed at it more than Delta Work, because I think Delta Work will be aimed at it more than Galvin, because I think Delta Work isn't going to be aimed as much for the Grand National, whereas I think Galvin will. Moving on to the Temps qualifier on Sunday, which was won by Shallow River. That might get him in. One horse who is definitely back in, again, is Mill Green. And quite ironically, Mill Green finished third in the qualifier to qualify. That means he's now finished third. What is that? Third at Cheltenham in 2022. Third at Aintree in 2022. Third at Haydock in 2023. Third at Cheltenham in 2023. Third at Aintree in 2023. Disappointed second. Third at Warwick in 2024. And now third at Exeter in 2024. What does his handicap mark look like in terms of his Temps final run? So he's finished third in the Temps final twice. He finished third behind Third Wind off a mark of 138. And he finished third behind Good Time Johnny off a mark of 138. Now, he is actually rated 140 at the moment. Handicapper would need to drop him a couple of pounds to give him that same handicap mark that he ran off. And to be honest, he wasn't good enough to beat them then. He's now 12. Unless the handicapper drops him 5, I probably can't see Mill Green winning it this time. Gal Road could certainly be interesting. Gal Road does have some form at the Cheltenham Festival. He did finish, 7th in 2022 behind Commander of Fleet. If he wants this 3-mile trip, which maybe he does, he could certainly be interesting. Maybe they've had this plan after finishing 4th in the Stayers Handicap Hurdle when they finished 4th behind Slate Lane, Fine Margin and Crambo. Possibly. I think there could be some others that I prefer in the Temps final over those though. Finally, the last horse or race I want to talk about is the 10 Up Novices Chase over 3 mile. Nick Rocket now qualifies for the not quite 4 mile National Hunt Handicap Chase thing, a National Hunt Chase Challenge Cup, or I don't know the name of the race, at Cheltenham, the amateur riders race. Favori de Champdou would be the interesting one for me, but not for any races at Cheltenham. It's when he goes Irish National. I'm sure that's where we'll see Favre de Champ though. I think he wants further. I think he's finding that he's not got the speed for 3 mile even. I mean, he only went off. He didn't. What did he go off last year for the? Let's just have a look. He went off a relatively short price for a race last year that was at Cheltenham. Let's have a look. Cheltenham. He went off 12s for the Albert Bartlett, and he pulled up. That would be why I would not send him back to Cheltenham. However, I would be aiming him at Fairyhouse for the Irish National. He does have a bit of form there. And yeah, that's probably what I would be doing with Favre de Champ, and he's one that I will keep an eye on for those long distance handicap chases. So yeah, there's some thoughts. Probably the main ones to take out. Definitely keep an eye out for David's Well. I like all of those suggestions that for those different races. Equinox for the Temps Final. No, Equinox for Aintree 3 mile. Picana for the Coral Cup. Ikarak for the Martin Pipe. Don't like Shishkin for the Gold Cup. Don't think it'd be good enough. Don't think Edward Stone would be good enough for the Champion Chase. I thought it almost worked perfectly in the Betfair Hurdle. Keep an eye out for all of those that I've mentioned in behind. Favour and Knickerbocker Glory being the main two for races for Dan Skelton to try and win bonuses. Mr. Coffee for the Kim Muir. Nothing there. I think Cantico was the best bumper winner over the weekend. Ascending, I don't mind him being dropped just the £2. I think he could be interesting back at Cheltenham. Trelawn, definitely for the Ultima. Ashdale Bob, definitely for the Coral Cup. Don't like anything there. And yeah, they would be the main ones that I've just mentioned there. So, thanks for listening. Hopefully, there's some interesting and helpful thoughts there for everybody.